encouragement is an inside job. I can't go seek a book. I can't go seek a person. There's times in my life where those other things make sense, but I'm in my own mind 24 hours a day. And if I don't understand and learn how to have that conversation in the mirror and say, today I'm not going to give up. Today I'm going to be a great husband and a great father, even though I didn't have a great example of that. I learned that encouragement is an inside job. I learned that love is an inside job. I learned that joy is an inside job. I learned that hope is an inside job.
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Kinder, and you'll meet Chris Kent Phelps in just a bit. It's our hope to bring you thought-provoking, unscripted conversations full of actionable ideas to fuel your important work in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This space is for you. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Michelle.
How are you today?
I'm doing well, and you?
I'm good. I was thinking about John Push-Gaines, Dr. John Push-Gaines, that everyone is about to meet, and how interesting it is that someone whose nickname is Push made the most compelling argument for rest that I've heard in a while.
Agreed.
I loved that juxtaposition.
We should share that PUSH stands for persevere until something happens, which does feel very juxtaposed to his powerful message of rest that listeners are about to hear.
Awesome. You want to share his bio?
Sure, I would love to. We'll share first that there was a conference of educators in Texas recently through the Texas Center for Student Supports, and Dr. Gaines was one of the keynote speakers, and we had several people reach out to us and suggest that we get in touch with him to come on to the podcast. So I love that he was found that way, because he moved so many educators that we know, and that's how he landed on the podcast. We're so happy to have him here. As we mentioned,
shout out to our lovely friends at the Texas Center for Student Supports. That is a group of powerful, committed, loving, lovely people.
Yes, who had the wisdom to bring him to the stage. And I did feel like watching this podcast, we speak often about love letters to educators, and I felt like his whole entire personal story is a love letter, another love letter to educators that we get to bring to the table today. But Dr. John Gaines is a former at-risk foster youth turned PhD, best-selling author, and one of America's most inspiring education speakers. He is a gifted storyteller who today will bring pieces of his own rich, inspiring story to life on our podcast. So I will let him tell it. I will not make an effort to paraphrase and do his resiliency a disservice. With a reputation for leaving audiences deeply moved and ready to act, Dr. Gaines equips every audience with the tools to persevere, lead, and dream big no matter what they're facing. John is a proud husband and father and a passionate believer that one encouraging voice can change the trajectory of a person's life. So without further ado, let's let John tell his story.
One further ado.
Okay.
One thing I loved about him is that in the course of these 45 minutes, he showed up as a polished keynoter, and he also showed up as this really dimensional human with so much vulnerability, and I'm grateful to him for that. He did such a lovely job he did such a generous gesture to the audience in the way he shows up in this interview.
Agreed. And he also is the only person who's gotten you to tell that much of your story. And at one point, I really thought you were going to say amen. So that was pretty impressive to me.
I thought about that too. I think there were multiple times in the conversation where I forgot we were doing a podcast. Like I was just so engrossed in the exchange and in his um, willingness to show up the way he did that yeah, I was a little jibber jabbery for sure.
We were not jibber jabbery. It was all relevant. Great points made, but it was. I just noticed that's the most that you've ever spoken about your own story. So I feel like listeners are in for a treat.
Okay. All right, let's listen.
Okay.
Hi, John.
Hey, how are you?
Well, I'm delighted to get to spend this time with you because your reputation, as I was telling you, precedes you. And I know I'm in for a treat, and I know listeners are in for a treat.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm always excited to visit Texas, to talk to people from Texas. I always joke because I can say y'all, and you won't look at me funny. So, what's up, y'all? I'm here.
Yeah, I love it. Yes, you were Texas coded at this time. I love it. Well, one of the things we like to start with is just inviting people to tell their story, which is such a pivotal part of your work. So I'm extra excited to ask you to do that.
Of course, yeah. I would love to share my story and specifically how educators, were the superheroes in my stories, and how caring adults were the superheroes in my story. I have a nonprofit. I'm from Washington. My name is John, and I'm a husband and I'm a father. We have 4 kids, and our youngest is 4 months old. And so if y'all see these bags under my eyes,
Think of
and
it.
don't judge me, okay? Um, I'm a firm believer in rest, but it's non-existent right now.
100%. How old is your oldest?
7, and then
So 7 to 4
yep,
months.
7, 4, 2, and 4 months.
Oh my gosh, y'all are busy.
Yep, yep.
Our youngest is 19 and she's home for the summer, and she got a package with her name on it, and I told her yesterday, I still when I see that I'm like, why are people sending my 5-year-old mail? Like it's just unfathomable that
That's funny.
she's 19.
So funny. Yeah.
Okay, keep going, keep going.
Yeah. So
Proud dad,
yeah.
proud husband.
Yep. So I like to lead with that because those are my most important titles. But the connection to that, if I did not have caring adults, if I did not have educators, I would not be the father and husband I am today. And so, without saying anything else, if we were to stop right there, like I want your listeners to understand and know that it's worth it. The work you do matters, and you're shaping and changing communities one person at a time. Because I learned how to be a husband and a father in the classroom, right?
Wow.
From caring adults, I learned confidence from caring adults in the classroom from educators. I didn't give up on me. Now I won't, and I get emotional even now, because I won't give up on my family because I watched educators not give up on me, and that's I always lead from that space because I think oftentimes as I talk to educators that are friends or folks that are showing up for young people, it's exhausting. It's tiring, and for me, I get tired. I get exhausted. I was recently at a program that I grew up in. I have a nonprofit at the local level, and so we support and partner with a lot of programs. And it was surreal for me because I visited this program and I'm walking into these classrooms, the same classrooms where I met tutors and people that transformed and changed my life. There's this woman named Miss Irene. I met Miss Irene when I was 11 years old. I was reading at a first grade level. I had a speech impediment. I was an angry, just frustrated kid. She was a retired educator, child welfare worker, and she would sit with me and just tutor me and teach me how to read at this program right in my community. Uh, it was a community that was predominantly black and brown. She was a white woman. She didn't look like us, but she led with faith. She led with belief. She led with love. And we didn't seek color. We didn't. She connected with us because she loved herself and she knew how to love us. And I'm back in this program. And I began to think about my story. As I think about my story, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington. In the early 1990s, Tacoma, Washington had some of the highest drug and crime rates in America. There was chaos on every street corner. In 1991, there was a shootout. Still, in modern day, it's the only time that has happened in the history, right? In modern day America, there is a shootout with the Army Rangers and the Hilltop Crips, like in broad daylight. That's how chaotic it was. And I was right just in that environment. I knew that my mother loved me, but my mother had an addiction. My father was a career criminal. He wasn't in my life as a kid. And so a lot of things that I went through at the time, if I'm being honest with you, it wasn't traumatic at the time, right?
Yeah.
Because you kind of don't know like what you're in, and you don't know,
Right.
you don't. And I didn't really realize. I thought it was normal, to have an absent father. I thought it was normal to have a mother that, like my sister and I, even at a young age, we knew what like drugs smelt like, from cocaine to crack to weed. We knew like these different smells, and when we would walk into our house, we knew what kind of drugs were being used based on the smell, like the aroma in the home. And for my sister and I, we thought that that was normal, but that was the environment I grew up in.
Yeah.
When I think about Miss Irene, the reason why I couldn't read and the reason why I had a speech impediment is because I was born with drugs in my system. And it was one of those things that I should have probably been in foster care. I should have probably been taken away at birth, but I wasn't. It just was a different time. I was born in 87, and I was in this environment really doing things for myself that no kid should have to do. I talked about my kids a little bit. I have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old. At 4 years old, I remember walking myself to school. At 4 years old, I cooked my first eggs by myself. My son can't even go to the bathroom by himself.
Right.
And so there were things that I had to experience and things that I had to do that were not normal, but I thought they were.
Yeah.
And so when I think about like educators and I think about people like Miss Irene from the tutoring service that I met her, just showing up, on a consistent basis and loving me, gave me something that I didn't experience at home. And she wasn't just the only one. One thing I truly live by, I often tell folks that I'm talking to, it takes one caring adult to help a young person survive. It takes at least 3. This is research, at least 3 to help a young person thrive. And so although I'm highlighting Miss Irene, it was truly a village. You know that old proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And so it was truly a village. And so my day-to-day was traumatic. My day-to-day was chaotic. But for me at the time, it was normal. I would come home every day to see my mother, to rush in before she would disappear for the evening. And I thought that was normal. The times that I spent with my mother where we would go out, in for activities or run errands, it was typically for her to go buy drugs. And for me, I just embraced those times. I remember going to like our downtown area and some guy opened up the back of the van and you'll see hair on needles, and he would come to her and make an exchange, and we'll walk back, and sometimes we'll stop at the store and get some candy. And that was normal for me, people in and out of my house. But my life shifted when I was 7 years old. I came home like any other day to see my mother and rushed into my home. And at 7 years old, I found my mother dead.
No.
And it was a devastating time because although my mother had her issues, she always loved me.
Right.
And I remember just, shaking her lifeless body and hoping that she would wake up. And I sat with her for probably 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
I sprinted to my grandmother's house and called the police. And my grandmother says something to me that I'd never forget. I sprinted to my grandmother's room. I said, "Grandma, I need to call the ambulance." She says, "Why, baby?" I said, "Because I think my mom is dead." And my grandmother looks at me with this stare I'll never forget. She says, "Baby, sometimes you have to encourage yourself." I didn't know what that meant. I was 7 years old. But my grandmother, as I look back on that story, my grandmother had 6 kids. She buried 4 of those kids before she passed away. 3 of those from drug overdose, where she was devastated. And she says to me, sometimes you have to encourage yourself. And now what I think my grandmother was trying to say to me, and what I understand now, is that my grandmother knew she wouldn't always be there for me. Something I share with educators all the time, like encouragement is an inside job. I can't go seek a book. I can't go seek a person. There's times in my life where those other things make sense, but I'm in my own mind 24 hours a day. And if I don't understand and learn how to have that conversation in the mirror and say, today I'm not going to give up. Today I'm going to be a great husband and a great father, even though I didn't have a great example of that. But because I learned confidence from educators. And so I think my grandmother was trying to say that to me, but as a mother, right, having 6 kids and outliving, I can't imagine outliving, all of your kids, almost all of your kids. She says to me, baby, sometimes you have to encourage yourself. And that moment changed my life because I learned that encouragement is an inside job. I learned that love is an inside job. I learned that joy is an inside job. I learned that hope is an inside job. But here's the thing about all those things. The reason why I'm so passionate right now, the reason why I'm trying to fight back tears is because I realized all those things had an address. Hope had an address, and that address was my school. Love had an address, and that address is where I got to see Miss Irene 3 days a week. Joy had an address, and that joy was my school. And for me, it absolutely changed and transformed my life because I would go to school and I would see Miss Irene and I would hear things like, don't give up. I remember having a conversation with the teacher. If it takes 3 caring adults to help a young person thrive. I remember my teacher, I was 7 years old. She pulls me to the side. She says, what's your dream? So I don't have a dream for myself. There's nothing I want to do. There's nothing I want to become. And she says to me, I know there's something. I said, maybe I want to go play football in college. But she knew that I was more than an athlete. And there was this image of Dr. King on the wall. And I said, maybe I want to be a doctor like Dr. King. I want to change and inspire the world. And she said, I believe in you. Those 4 words, I believe in you. And it was the first time I heard that from an adult. And it was powerful to hear that from an adult. But what changed inside of me was a belief that I began to really believe in myself. Hope became real for me. Something clicked in that moment. Did my life get easier? No. There are still things I had to navigate, still issues, as you know, if you're living and you have a heartbeat, you know that you've been through some things. But I still talk to that teacher today. I talked to her just on Monday, and she says, hey, we should get together. My father's in the hospital. I've been struggling. And I think it's cool how just the circle of life works, because now she can lean on me for, encouragement.
Amazing.
I go to that tutoring center, and one of Miss Irene's friends, she says, I remember you. And she says, I'm going to go see Miss Irene, this week. Miss Irene, 96 years old. I said, please tell her I said hello. I got to thank Miss Irene maybe 5 years ago. I surprised her at her church, and I surprised her with flowers. And I just said, Miss Irene, thank you. And she said, I could tell you now that I love you. And I said, I always knew that you loved me. I always
There is
knew,
no question.
right, that you love me. And so that's the beginning of my story. A lot of trauma, but I believe when seeds are planted, especially seeds of hope, those are the kinds of seeds that can penetrate the darkest of times and become a light. And so I used to, be afraid and ashamed to share my story. I didn't start sharing it until after college because I didn't want people to make excuses for me. And I didn't really want to make excuses for myself. But now I happily share my story because I think, in life is all about relationships, right? I believe every great thing we have is from relationships. And if it were not for the caring adults and relationships that I had with educators and tutors, I would not be here today. So when I start and say I'm a husband and I'm a father, that means everything to me because caring adults helped me thrive. I'm thriving. Is life hard? Yep. Do I still have some things that I'm working through? Yep. You can ask my wife, but I am, I am here and I'm happy. To share a little bit of my story today. So
The combo platter of the powerful message from your grandmother in that moment when you told her about your mom, and then the educator saying, I believe in you. You get in touch with what you want and what you dream. And then the consistency of Miss Irene, like you're painting such a beautiful picture of the amplification of hope and co-regulation and resilience when there's trauma.
yeah,
Like it seems like those things cut through you and changed you as a
yeah.
person because of the context of your early life. Not instead of it, or not, it's connected to me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think, and my grandmother, she became my hero. But my grandmother, the reason why I give her so much credit is because she knew it couldn't just be on her shoulders. This young kid, and she had so between the four kids that passed away, and then the other kids that lived with her, my grandmother essentially had a foster home. She owned this duplex, and there's probably 15 of us sleeping upstairs. And my sister and I were sleeping in a living room on the floor. There are so many of us, and it was so much pressure on my grandmother, and she knew she needed help. And so part of it is like hope. I remember hearing when I was young, a mentor told me, he said, hope is not a plan. Like, have hope, but it's not a plan. Like, you still need a plan. I'm grateful my grandmother gave us hope, but she also had a plan to get us some extra support. And that's why teachers really showed up in my life. And I remember my first grade teacher that I talked about, and another teacher, they come to my house when I was 7 years old, and they say, hey, because I wasn't going to school. I was just like, would you want to go, to school? I was just scared, and kids made fun of me. I didn't, I felt like I was just different. I didn't have a mom, and so
You were
I was
traumatized. My
traumatized, right? And
gosh.
so I just made every excuse not to go to school. These teachers, they show up and they say, hey, we're just here to check on John. And I talked a little bit about my first grade teacher, but this other teacher, I want to share a little bit of her story. And they knock on the door, and I remember looking up, and they said, we're just here to check on John. I'm like, they really care. Because sometimes it's with your words, and more importantly, I believe it's with your actions. Because young people will, the great Maya Angelou said it best, people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And even what I'm learning with my kids, they will remember some of what I said, but they're going to model what I do. And it's the same with education, right? And for them to show up, and mind you, think about the neighborhood I grew up in. You have these two like first and second year teachers, 21, 22, recently graduated from college, in a
Babies themselves.
predominantly black and brown neighborhood. And when I tell you it was chaotic, there were probably the block that they had to walk to get to it was my grandma lived 2 blocks from the school, but those 2 blocks I would get up on any given day, and there were probably 25 to 30 gang members selling drugs, just criminal activity up and down that block. And now I felt safe. They all knew me. They would say, hey, little John. And it was never tension with me. But if you weren't from that neighborhood, if you didn't look like the people from that neighborhood, if you just looked like you're out of place, I can only imagine
Suspect.
the questions and the comments. And they didn't drive. Like, because then if you're driving slow through that neighborhood, it's a different story. So I think for them in their own mind, they're like, it's probably best that we walk and just identify, like, let's wear our badges. We're teachers. We just want to check on this young man. And so they knock on the door, and I remember seeing them, and it changed like how I viewed love, really, because love is more than words, right? Love shows up in the darkest of times. Love shows up when it's uncomfortable, and it literally changed my perspective. I remember at 7 years old in love. But I want to talk about this teacher. Her name is Melaine. My brother opens the door, and my oldest brother, and that was the first time she met my brother. And Miss Melaine ended up becoming my sister-in-law.
No way.
Yes. And it's not funny, right? It's not
I
funny.
love that so
I'm
much.
sure, like, if you're a teacher, a young teacher, and you're single, go knock on some doors. You never know.
Do the right thing. You might get a husband.
Yeah. So
That is fascinating.
it's a cool story, and just fast forward as I think about my story. She gave me one of my first opportunities to speak in a school. I remember she paid me $250, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm rich. How many schools I was happy?" And but I share her story, and I wanted to share that story because that moment taught me a lot, and I truly believe teaching changes lives, but also teaching shouldn't cost you your own life. And the reason why I share that, a year and a half ago, my brother calls me. He says my sister, and she was always tired and just stressed. She cared so much about her students. I was speaking in Chicago. I get a text from my brother. He says, "Hey," and he doesn't really. If you know my oldest brother, he doesn't really text like this. So I thought it was different. He just said, "Hey, can you pray for your sister?" So for that man to say the word "pray" was
You knew
I knew
something
something. It
was
was like, okay.
different.
I say, yeah. I'll call you after this, speech. I go speak at this school, this assembly. I have another text says, "Hey, when you land," they knew I was coming home. I get a text from my other brother. He says, "When you land, just come straight to the hospital." I'm like, and I'm thinking, like, what's going on? I'm looking through all my texts. My oldest brother, the one that is married to Melaine, I had another text from him just saying she just has the flu, but they want to monitor. Just come visit. She would want to see you. So I'm like, okay, great. By the time I land, I'm on my way to the hospital. I get a text and it says Melaine has passed away,
Oh,
and it was a traumatic. I just thinking about our family has been through a lot, but this was a woman who didn't do drugs. She was a principal now of a school, loved by her community, loved by her, my niece and my nephews, loved by her husband, just and on did everything right and just dedicated her life to serving young people. But oftentimes when I would talk to her, she was always tired and burned out. And I'm not saying that's the thing that took her life. But I often share with educators, I think she will want me to share, like, it's okay to rest. Like, it's okay to be impactful. But like thinking about what my grandmother said, if encouragement is an inside job and you're called to be an educator, to encourage young people, to inspire young people, my question often for educators and caring adults, like, what are you doing to encourage yourself? Like, what are you doing to fill your cup? Because burnout isn't the price. Burnout shouldn't be the price of being a great educator,
wow.
right? Burnout should not be the price of being a great educator. And I think for me now, and I'm not in a classroom, but I mentor and I have a ton of programs. We work with over 36 school districts. I'm a better mentor for the young people in front of me if I'm taking care of home, if I'm getting my
Yeah.
rest, if I'm being a great husband, if I'm showing up for my kids. My grandfather would often tell me, he would say, "Son, who you are in private is who you are. You can't be someone different in public than you are in private. So if you want to win in public, win in private." And so my encouragement is just natural for me to encourage. My encouragement to the educators that will listen to this: make sure you have a system in place where you're filling your cup, because you can't pour from the empty cup. You can't give from the empty empty place. Get comfortable giving from a place of overflow. Get comfortable taking your rest days. Get comfortable the same things I do with my kids and the same things I learned from Miss Harper. Like affirmations are still very powerful, right? What we speak, Maya Angelou said, I'm thinking, I've been reading a lot about Maya Angelou lately and her quotes, but she said, words become things. Words always become things. And so my question to myself that I'm often asking, what words am I speaking over myself? Do I like the things that are in front of me? Do I like the things that are happening around me? If the words that I'm speaking are creating these things, maybe I need to change the words. Maybe I need to change the thoughts, right? I live by this mantra: great thoughts, great actions, great habits, great purpose. And it's something that I just kind of like, as I talk about like what systems do you have in place, I study mentorship. And the common thing with successful mentors, a common thing they have in common, they've mastered the 80-20 rule. And essentially what that says is, in order to take care of, and you know this, but I just want to, this is how I kind of translate it. In order to handle 80% of the results, you need to conquer 20% of the task. And the greatest mentors, the greatest caring adults, the greatest educators conquer those 20% of task on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, like, why does that make sense in my life? So for me, how do I translate that and make it personal to me? The reason why I live by great thoughts, great actions, great habits, great purpose, because great thoughts for me are 20% of the things I need to do every day that's going to take care of 80% of the results, 20% of the things that I know will fill my cup so I can go out into the road and give to others. One, I'm going to focus on what I'm grateful for. And that changed the game for me. Like if I could just start every day with a great thought. So every morning, if I could show you my phone, every morning I'm in my phone, I have a gratefulness note. I'm writing down, reflecting for 5 to 10 minutes on what I'm grateful for. Because those are the things, right? Those are the thoughts and the words that I want to become things. And those eventually turn into my actions. And those actions, if I could do it every day, Aristotle said a habit is what we repeatedly do. If I could do that thing every day, ultimately, I'm going to be comfortable, great purpose, knowing that I'm walking in my purpose, not because I have these material things, not because I have this nice house or this nice car. It's because I understand that in order for me to make an impact, I have to be like the educators that made an impact. Miss Irene, I saw her a week after I thanked her. I surprised her, right? I ran into Miss Irene a week after at this gala they were remodeling the Bryant Neighborhood Resource Center. And she brings me this big journal. And in this journal, she's writing down what she's grateful for. In this journal, she has like names of students, their favorite color. And she said, it wasn't just you. It wasn't just you. And that's what great educators do. They make you feel like it's just you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just like, okay, Miss Irene, she had her system. There are things that she was doing on a day-to-day basis in order for her to give to the young people in front of her. So
It seems like her and the two women, the now sister-in-law, the two educators who came, all of them were acting in a way that sent you the message, you're not invisible. We see you. We value you. You matter. We will do things that put us at some risk to get to see if you're okay. Those things, like it sounds like even as a 7-year-old, permeated you.
yeah, absolutely. I think when educators thrive, students flourish. And I think the risk, it's hard to plant a seed because you don't know what's going to happen to that seed. Some seed will grow, some seed will be snatched up, and it just depends, right? And so I think there's a risk in always giving to yourself. There's a risk in always, but when you plant a seed and you nourish that seed, and that seed is in a good environment to where that seed is getting watered, eventually one of my favorite poets, this happens to be one of my best friends, he says eventually that seed will become a tree that provides shade for the next generation. And for me, the risk for the educators that showed up for me they get to see the reward of that risk. Now I'm doing the same thing that they did for me. I know that, I mean, there's stories and calls and from young people that have died by suicide, from young people just trying to figure it out that I've mentored, that I've cared for. And anytime you love, there's always a risk attached to it. But I know more often than not, if I could just be comfortable and confident in doing my part, there's going to be greater reward, on the outcome on the other side. And so, really, for me, that's why I'm so grateful for the educators that showed up, because I know I know it was uncomfortable, especially like when you get some kids and anytime I leave, my family, there's always a risk, and I know there was like sacrifice that they had to make on a day-to-day basis. I'm just so grateful that they did. One, because like I shared, I remember the words, a lot of the words, but more so, I'm not really sharing like the quotes or the one-liners that they shared. It was more so like the actions that they took. Because I remember some of what they said, but I just remember the actions more so.
And how it made you feel,
made
to
you
your
feel.
point about Maya Angelou's quote. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Katie Worden, District Partnership Lead for TackieBox, an elementary program that pairs innovative content with a tactile tool and daily practice to help kids self-monitor their words, actions, and relationships. It's proven to reduce behavior incidents by 66%. Students build self-awareness, self-regulation, and real connection. And it's a light lift for teachers with a profound impact on well-being. Visit tackiebox.com to bring it to your campus.
I am so appreciative of your caution flag that really crystallized for you after losing your sister, which I'm so sorry about that. And I'm sorry for her community. It sounds like she was a bit of a giant
Yeah.
in her community. The caution flag of you doing this work to the best of your ability without a pound of flesh is enough.
Yeah.
And the seeds are going to go out, and some are going to create those trees that then give shade to the next generation.
Yeah.
Some won't, but that's not really our business. Our business is to plant the seeds and be that consistent. So for educators who are listening and they're like, I've been showing up with such care in a way that is a detriment to my own health, my own mental health, and I have no idea how to begin the shift because it's become almost an identity. What do you have about that?
I think sometimes when I talk to educators, sometimes it's like, because I'm not here to necessarily teach, I'm more so here to remind. And I think sometimes educators forget that, like every lesson's a seed, but every seed, as we talk about shade trees, every seed is invisible yet. So you might not see the fruit. And so sometimes that's difficult. And so I was like, I need to give more. I need to do more at the detriment of what? At the cost of what? Your family, your own sanity, your people, right? And so I remember sitting down with a guy who is he was an educator and a teacher, and now he's a world-class speaker. Has a company where he's training on grit and like resiliency and things of that nature. And I remember sitting down with him when I first started speaking. This was 2014 or 15. I said, I want to be a great speaker. I want to impact. And he said to me, do you love yourself? I'm like, yeah, what do you mean? Yeah, I love myself. He said, okay. He said, I want you to call me tomorrow. He said, but I want you to go home and I want you to look in the mirror tonight and I want you to say, I love you. I'm like, I love you to who? He said, I want you to look in the mirror and say, I love you to you. And he said, do it 10 times. He said, call me tomorrow. I said, whatever. I said, man, just tell, like, how do I earn money? Like, how do I make impact? I'm like, this is what's going to take. Like I want the lifestyle you have. So just give me if this is what I need to
Crack the
do.
code.
I was like, whatever. I was like, well, we'll talk tomorrow. So I go home and I literally say, I look in the mirror and I get emotionally thinking about it because I remember like this. I was just like becoming this man, but I was still like this little boy. And I look in the mirror and I say, I love. And before I could say you, I just began to cry. I'm like, what the heck? They're like, what's going on? And as we talk about like the shift, I realized that I began to give so much of myself without loving me. My grandfather would often say, son, if you want to love others, you first have to learn how to love yourself.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. I was like 4. I didn't understand. Like, okay, granddaddy. But then when I go through this action and I go through this exercise that one of my mentors told me to go through, I literally hear my grandfather's voice. I've been trying to love people without loving me.
Yeah.
And it would have burned me out. And I get emotional thinking about it now, because I think what happens and this is just general for any adult that hears this, we get our lives, we get our careers, and slowly as time goes on, we start to just live in this box. You know, my kids right now, I can ask them today, what do you want to do when you get older? And the dreams, like my son, I want to play soccer and I want to be a scientist. And I'm like, you can do it all, son. Like just a big dreamer. But as adults, I think like the less we love ourselves, the harder it is to love other people. The harder it is to dream, the easier it is to become confined, and the easier it is to be in a prison. I was with a friend who we do some mentorship together, and he spent some time in prison. Has a powerful story, and made it to the NFL after he gets out of prison. And I'll share with him. I said I was talking to another gentleman that ended up in prison. Now he's out. He's mentoring, and I said to him, I said, what is one of the things that surprised you? He went to prison when he was 17 years old, gets out when he was like 40. So after about 20 years of being in prison, what's one thing that surprised you about being outside of prison? He said to me something I'll never forget. He said, what I realized, he said, more people are in prison on the outside of prison than they were on the inside of prison. He said, I met more free people inside of the prison walls. Wow. I'm like, that just, he said, there's so many people
And he's
in the
right.
prison of their mind. And I'm like, this is why this work matters. This is why, like, if the educators that impacted my life, they taught me how to be free. And it's the best. I don't remember the math lesson. I don't remember I had an English teacher in high school that introduced me to spoken word poetry. It was an English lesson, but more importantly, she taught me the power of stories, like how to unpack my story, how to share my story, and it changed my life. Like the educators that impacted my life, they taught lessons, but like I shared, if every lesson is a seed, like what seeds are you planting in your own mind? What are you modeling for young people? Because that's what they're going to remember most. And so I know it's difficult. Life is hard. It's tough.
Yeah.
But don't get stuck in the prison of your mind. Like dream again.
Yeah.
Dream again. Yeah.
And cast yourself as the central character in your own life, not in a selfish way, but in an agency way.
Yeah.
That is a really powerful thing to think about. The kind of rote way our lives become, especially if you're service oriented and you're overextended,
Yeah.
which many of our listeners are both.
Yeah.
And so to even give themselves the room to experiment with degrees, like a few degrees of freedom,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, physically, calendar wise, and just begin to see that you can have that level of freedom and sanity. And rather than the narrative that that's going to make your work less impactful, which is a false dichotomy, people begin to see, oh, when I love myself, when I care for myself, when I rest, I actually have more power in the lives of the people around me, not less.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish that thought.
No, I'm
But
finished. Yeah, keep
I
going.
feel like freedom is the courage to live according to your values, not your fears. And I think when you have adults live according to their values and not their fears, as we talk about modeling, you're going to teach young people to live on mission. And that's really what I learned. Like I live according to, do I still have fear? Yep. But I learned that every obstacle made me stronger for that next thing. I learned that every hurdle is meant to be jumped over. And because I had caring adults that taught me how to not just survive, but to thrive, I now live based on my values. My values are what dictate and control my day to day, and not just some big like beginning of the year. Here's like what I want to accomplish. Here's no, it's just like a day to day
Daily.
thing, right? I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I know eventually it will happen. Yeah,
And there's so much energy in the way you present your relationship with your inner life.
yeah,
Like it makes me want to lean into my own relationship with my own inner life, and I hope that's happening for listeners too. It's just like, oh, this thing that maybe feels very heavy and very exhausting, with some intentional internal and external tweaks that you then keep up daily or weekly or whatever's manageable, you can completely shift the experience of your life without huge things changing.
absolutely. And I had sometimes the first act of freedom is giving yourself permission to rest. I'll say that again. Sometimes the first act of freedom is giving yourself permission to rest. It's not overcomplicated. I in high school I had like some chest pain. Come to find out, like they say nothing's wrong. I'm good. Fast forward, I'm 38 now, and these last several years I started gaining weight and was having like a little bit of issues, and so I go into the doctor. Long story short, after a bunch of tests, I told my wife even in December, I said, I need to switch doctors this year because something's just off. I go into the doctor, get all these tests, and I go into this appointment. She says to me, she's in so many words, she says, you're about to have a massive heart attack or a stroke.
What?
I'm like, what? She says, you were born with a genetic heart condition. This is my first time actually sharing this story publicly. She says, you were born with a genetic heart condition. And it shocked me. I sat back, I started sweating a little bit, but I'm a person of faith. And I just said, I just wanted to kind of control the narrative. I said, do I have time? Do I have some grace to kind of think about things? And she was like, you're going to have to be on lifetime medication. Long story short, I said, I'm going to just completely change my diet. I'm going to do all the CAT scans, do all the things they recommend, but I don't want to get on that lifetime medication yet until my next follow-up appointment. And after all the research, talking to the doctors, what I found out is there's certain triggers and things your body will tell you. Like, for example, for me, I would get really tired at night, and I'm like, I'll just push through. Let me get an energy drink and just finish this task. And I realized, like, I was a prisoner to my own goals, right? I was a prisoner to, like, that next win. It's like I've been through so much and I lost so much. So if I just go to college, if I go get that football scholarship, I did it. I feel good. But now what's that next thing? That next win? I need to get that, that master's degree. I need to go get that doctorate. Now if I just write that book, like here's the next thing. I'm trying to accomplish all, and I became a prisoner to like winning.
Wow.
I became a prisoner to my goals, to my task. And I remember just talking to my wife early this year, and I said, I'm learning like when I'm tired, and I get emotionally thinking about it now because like just rest, just rest. It's okay.
It's
You know what I mean? And having like this heart thing has really gave me a sense of urgency. It's something you can live with. But I also know like today is all we have. And if I were to check out today, how would I want to be remembered? What would I want to be? Would I want to be scrambling, trying to finish some goal or something that no one's going to remember? Or would I want to be like spending time with my family, with my kids, sharing, or would I want to be spending time sharing on a podcast passionately, knowing that this is going to exist forever and this will outlive me, right? So it helped me prioritize just my day to day. Like how am I moving on a day to day basis? What am I saying no to? Just last week I said no to 2 speaking engagements, and not because the pay wasn't great, it just didn't align, and that's okay. And afterwards, I remember thinking, I've changed. I've changed because I would have tried to in the past. I maybe would have tried to find a way to make it work. Maybe if we just changed something here, we could figure out something there. But I'm like, what is it? There's no amount of money in the world that could, first of all, make me want to leave like my family or my kids. Like it really has to be on mission, right? As I talk about values, it has to be so connected to my mission that I know I'm operating in purpose. Even like podcasts. I've been getting invited to a lot of podcasts. I'm like, let me read about this podcast before I say yes. So everything, because now when I'm on a podcast, you can tell, okay, this guy I just met, but he really wants to be here. I don't have to like sell you that. Like, I want to be here because it's on mission. I know that the work that you're doing to inspire, to motivate, to give oxygen, right? Is part of my mission as well. So it's easy for me to say yes to things like this. There's no amount of money you could pay me. Like these are the things I would do in my sleep. These are the things I would do for free. And so for me, sometimes the first act of freedom is giving yourself permission to rest.
I mean,
Fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. Giving yourself permission to fill in the blank. To say no. To say yes. To be your authentic self.
to relentlessly pursue alignment.
Yeah.
I hear that in your words. It feels to me on this side of it that your diagnosis may have saved you in more ways than one.
Yeah. Absolutely. It not just physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. I was and it was a holistic approach. December hit, and as I was reflecting on like the 2026 and just the year in advance and thinking and reflecting on some of the goals, thinking about this nice beautiful home we live in, and I'm like, but I don't want to say I felt empty, but I just was like, this is not it. We've made impact. We've done so much as a family. We've built businesses, but it just felt like not pointless, but not quite purposeful. And I remember just sitting and reflecting, and I think about words for the year, and I just felt like I was no longer obedient to the mission that I felt like I was called to live out. And so I said, this next year, I'm just going to do from the spiritual, emotional to the physical. Here's some things that I want to be obedient to. Like, I need to get back in therapy. That was something I wrote down. Like, I'm not just because I'm at this stage in my life. Like, a lot of that work is proactive work. You don't need to be in a crisis to say, I need a therapist. You have not arrived.
Another way,
right?
Yeah, it's like another way to rest.
Absolutely.
Like giving yourself permission to have someone who is creating a container for you to do your work is a way we rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I realize freedom's not found in having everything. It's really found in wanting less and needing less. And so from the even for this, I'm like, hey, I have about an hour 'cause I got rid of my car. I bought what I thought was my dream car. I'm riding my bike. We have a family car, but I don't need all this stuff. Here's the things that I need. I need to make sure I'm whole. I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself. I got up to 305 pounds. I'm happy to say today is July 9th. I'm down about 55 pounds. So it was like all areas of my life. I feel happy. I feel joy. It's easy for me to slow down, not get as angry for the things that typically would make me just upset that just going on in the world. I get to be me. This is you're getting a full version or a real authentic version of me, and there's no greater joy than being able to show up as myself, detached from all the things that the world says, here's what you need to be a success. I feel so much more successful because I'm restful.
Wow. I remember, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, kind of looking up in my own life, and by external standards, people would say I was at a peak. And I was happy. I was enjoying it. I was taking the adrenaline and running with it. But I asked myself, like, is this the life I want or I am here to live? Or am I just like unconsciously co-signing cultural norms of what it means to be successful? And when I started being like, tearing these contracts up that I didn't even realize I'd signed, of like, this is how someone dresses, this is how someone, the cars they drive, this is the houses they have, this is the amount of social engagements you say yes to. I just started tearing all those up and just living from that place of unapologetic alignment. And over the last however many years, 6, 7 years, it's completely reshaped my life. And still to this day, if someone was looking at me, they might go, I don't understand the choices. But if you have a really close insider look, you'd go, oh,
Yeah.
she rests. She does the things that are aligned. She has completely experimented with this notion that if you do this, what flows through you will have so much more impact and so much more integrity versus the, kind of cultural norm of however much you suffer is how much you care.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. I was walking with it's funny because he's become a friend, but I went to high school with his sons. And so, same age as his sons, they're a year older than me, and played sports with their sons growing up. And so I always knew of him, but never really, we just recently got close these last several years. He's a principal, as well, but he walks, every morning, wakes up early and walks every morning. And he's the best principal in, hopefully we don't play this for people in my city, but shout out to all the principals in Tacoma, Washington. But
You're just a tiny bit biased.
yeah,
You can't.
in my opinion, he's the best principal in the city, and he's actually going to be nominated for National Principal of the Year. So your listeners might know the name, and I'll have to share that with you, and we'll have to play his clip when he wins it. But I was walking with him yesterday, and he didn't say this to me, but what I picked up from him is he, in this stage in his life, he has given himself permission to redefine what success looks like in a way that includes his own well-being. Like, it's non-negotiable for him to
Fabulous.
get up early, to walk, to have his quiet time. And it makes sense when you go to his building, the energy he has for his staff, the energy he has for his students. Literally, this school, when he first took it over, he calls me because he can go be a speaker, a consultant, and like teach around the nation. I think I'm encouraging him because I think more people need to hear him. But right now, this is where he's at. So he calls me 3 years ago. He says, "Hey, the district, they want me to take on this building that with this specific demographic of students in this certain area." I'm like, "Yeah, do it." He said, I need your support. Will you partner?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. I will do whatever I can." Before he gets there, they had 110 suspensions. 110 suspensions. They only have about 450 kids. It's not like a massive Texas, middle school. It's just, it's a large school for our city, but it's not like a Dallas middle school. You get 1,000, 1,500, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
100 and something suspensions. I talked to him yesterday. They just finished 2026, his third year. 7 suspensions.
I mean, I want to watch that documentary. I want to read that book.
Right.
Yes.
7 suspensions. And there's intentional things that we've done together that he's done. But I'm like, the most important thing, and this is my first time out of all the years I've known him, this is my first time actually waking up and walking with him. But I said the most important thing that he has done has been this morning walk, his quiet time. And selfishly, he probably doesn't invite people all the time. He was like, "Yeah, yesterday I walked with the superintendent. Today I'm walking with you. Tomorrow I'm walking by myself." And then that's probably very intentional, right? And I just thought about, he's probably, 30 years older than me, maybe 25 years, older than me, but he is thriving in his life because he's given himself permission to redefine success and it includes his well-being, right?
Me, come on. That is the dream for the listeners. Like, what does that look like in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I could talk to you for 17 days
Same,
straight and
same.
just like breaks for a little, shove some food in my face. You are such a gift. Like, I have to ask, like, is your grandmother and grandfather, are they still living?
No, they passed away. Yep.
How old at what
Yeah.
point in your arc did they die?
So my grandmother, and it actually changed. And I just want to share one more story because the same. I could talk to you too. I'm saying some stuff. I need to I'm trying to take notes. Some of you see me. I'm trying to take notes. I'm saying some good stuff. But it's really the question.
We have it recorded. Don't worry.
Right? I think when you're asking the right questions, you just say stuff that it just responds to the question. So you're a really good podcaster, interviewer. So thank you. I appreciate you. But I just want to share just a quick story about my grandmother. My grandmother passed away. I was a freshman in college, and how I received the news of her passing away. I was in a car. There's drugs in the car. I was a football player. We're on our way to this party, and there are 4 other guys in the car listening to loud music. My brother calls me. And mind you, at this point, the brother that ended up basically raising me, he's a police officer. He retired recently, but he's called me, and I'm in this car, drugs, music. I'm like, okay, I don't want to answer, so I declined the call. And then he calls again, and so I'm like, he never really calls twice, and so I answer, and he says, "Hey, grandma just passed away." I'm like, what? And I shared with them, I said, "Hey fellas, can you let me out of the car? Just got news my grandmother passed away." I'm crying. And it's snowing in the town that I'm in, and I get out of the car, and no one gets out with me except one of the guys, and he walks back with me, and we don't really say anything, but people will remember how you made them feel. And I remember my grandmother taught me a lesson. She often make these pancakes, and later in her life she had dementia, but one thing she remembered was how to make me pancakes. It was my favorite thing and my favorite time with her. So she would just make these pancakes, and in the pancakes there were so many lessons, like don't overmix because you ruin the blessing. Here's the ingredients. It was like the formula to success. And I remember a lesson my grandmother taught me in that moment. It changed my life. I said, I'll never smoke weed again. I'll never make a decision like this again. Because she taught me, she says, your closest friends will reveal themselves in your darkest moments. And it was a lesson that changed and shaped like how I show up today, who I partner with, who I work with, what principles I decide to walk with, what school buildings I decide to go in. Because you want to be with people that suffer well, that understand pain, and are not going to give up or choose what's comfortable in the midst of pain. Know how to just sit with people in the middle of grief. Like those are the kind of people I want to be around. So although my grandmother passed away when I was 19, the lessons and the legacy that she left, I often say legacy is not what you leave for people, legacy is what you leave in people. There's no amount of money, no dollar amount, no home. Like her legacy and my grandfather's legacy still lives on because that was the seed, right? That has grown into a tree. So
Do you ever wonder if that timing was like her final act of love?
yeah, and and she had dementia.
Yeah, not
But it
on
was
purpose, but almost mystically.
yeah, I truly believe because I was like one of the only ones she would still connect with. It was like she would snap out of it. And it was just like one of the most surreal just times in my life. She would just for a moment just snap out of it
Yeah.
and say, "Baby, do you
She
remember?"
could
You
find
know,
you.
yeah. And it was such a special time. But she just was such a loving person. My grandfather was actually a Baptist preacher, educator, taught in a mental health, like a mental ward, folks that needed help, like for his 9 to 5, and so the lessons for him were always just straight and firm. And he passed away at 96, still had a clear mind, still,
Wow.
and he just, peacefully passed away. And a lot of what he taught me still lives on for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no question. Do you have a sense of what they would have to say about your work in the world present day?
I think they would probably share a similar message, just to be kind to yourself, to love yourself. And if you do those things well, it's going to be easier to be kind and to love, the people in front of you. I think they would
Um,
probably share something similar to that.
I mean, that's like the message of encourage. Sometimes you have to encourage
Yep.
yourself, like
Yep.
that 7-year-old moment.
Yep.
What would they say about you though? Like, what would their reflection be about who you've become?
That's a really good question. My grandfather, I did get to hear some of that from my grandfather. He just was proud of me because he passed away later. I think I have one kid and I was married. He was able to be at my wedding. And he just was so proud. He was so proud. I remember him being so proud of me. My grandmother, I think she would say something along the lines of, "You did it. You survived." We had so much death in our family, a lot of it connected to like drug use, even recently. But between myself and my 3 other siblings from my mom, we're all, business owners, kids, married. And I think we're the only siblings in our whole family that we can say everyone from that household are doing something, legally,
Yeah.
doing the right thing, wanting to give back to others. And so I would think she would say, you did it. You did it.
Yeah.
And that will give me
Oh,
peace. Even saying that now, like it gives me peace because like I shared in the beginning, I think for a season in my life, I was just chasing, the
yeah.
next thing.
Yeah.
And I think just happened, like her voice, like her restful spirit, like, hey, it's still going to unfold. It still will happen for you, but chase the right things, and then the right things will fall.
Mm. I mean, makes me think of your image of the seed becoming the shade tree. That shade tree's not striving.
Yep.
Like that shade tree is planted,
Come
it's
on.
rooted, it's grounded,
Yep.
and it does its work in the world.
Yeah. And the fruit doesn't strain. You
Right.
need the right root. The tree grows, and the fruit, it's not about the fruit. It's about the root. And that's really our conversation today, right?
Perfect summary
It's
statement.
the inside. You get that thing right, everything else will just take. You don't have to strain. I think the issue, the burnout, and the exhaustion, and the detrimental to your own is when you're trying to strain, because you can't manufacture the fruit. You can't manufacture the fruit.
Right. It will tell the story of the root every time. Whoa. Thank you. Thank you for this time. I feel changed by it, and I know our listeners will too.
Yeah, thank you. I'm grateful to be here. I am grateful for every listener that is going to listen. I know that I probably will never meet you, the listeners, but maybe if you ever meet me, I want to say thank you to your face and thank you online. Thank you for the work that you do, and don't forget about and don't neglect yourself.
Perfection. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Well, there is absolutely no mystery as to why we heard from so many folks that we had to have him on after spending that time with him. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think I texted you Sunday when I was watching this. This is everything.
You did. You did.
I was just, it was a lovely way to spend an afternoon watching that. So thank you.
Well, thank Dr. John Push Gaines. Tell me what you want to drill down on, like what resonated for you.
Okay, so the first thing that jumped out at me occurred early in the interview, but I was very moved by his kind of message around the importance of loving yourself and in order to love others well. And that's something that I have thought about a lot. You know, you memorize the Bible verse when you're a kid, especially when you grow up in Texas, love your neighbor as yourself. And I always thought, I'm great at loving my neighbor, but I'm not that great at loving myself. And then I think from this perspective, I understand that when you miss that part, there's a little bit of martyrdom in the loving of others if you skip over that piece of loving yourself. And then and he said, you know, even when he was talking about Miss Irene in the beginning, he made the comment that she connected with us because she loved herself and knew how to love us. So I immediately wrote that quote down. And then later, you know, he really drilled down on the importance of that piece, the loving yourself so that you can love others well. And I feel like his message around rest is a how or a strategy of loving yourself.
Nice. It makes me think of our beloved mutual friend, Christine, who talks about how we have to be included in whatever we're extending to our community or to the world. Like if we're excluded from it, to your point, there's a pound of flesh, there's martyrdom, there's a limit to what we can do. If we're included, it's mutually reinforcing and we can keep on keeping on. That's a good one. Also, early on in the conversation, one of the things that caught my attention is when he so pointedly said that educators help shape the husband and father he became. And obviously the speaker and community activist and all of that as well. But just that idea that educators are not just shaping the child in front of them, they're impacting entire future family units, entire future communities. Like the reach, the depth and the breadth of their impact is at such a magnitude.
I made a note, and this was kind of, my intention was to talk about this later, but I'll bring it up now. That's real legacy work. And he spoke of, you know, he chose to come on the podcast because this podcast will live on after him, and his books will live on after him. And so he's thinking about it from a legacy standpoint. And I started thinking about, for educators, every single student that comes in front of them is legacy work. And, in the business world, people often separate stages of life. There's this stage of life where I'm working, earning. And then there's this stage of life where I'm focused on legacy. But educators are focused on legacy from day one.
Wow.
And I just loved that thought.
It's
a life
so true. Yeah. And it's those little moments repeated over and over and over again that equal a shift in the trajectory of the people in front of you. That's not the same in the business world. Like, it's like a no lift or a very, very heavy lift. When you start thinking about legacy, teachers get up, do what you do, including yourself in the kindness, and the rest takes care of itself.
Sorry, I was again a quick pause to text a child I was recording a podcast.
I saw him peek his head in. He made a cameo.
Yes. Okay, so moving to the conversation around trauma, a few things jumped out at me. One, it kind of pulled my heartstring that he made the comment it wasn't traumatic at the time. And for those who haven't studied trauma like me, I have not studied it deeply, that just made me think about, my own experiences of it and not understanding that you're in it. And then that made me think a lot about his mom. And he made the comment that she loved him. She had issues, but she always loved him. And I thought, gosh, I bet that would make her so happy to hear. And then I thought about, what if his mom would have had a Miss Irene or a Barb like Tasha? Could that have changed the trajectory for her? But yet, even though she didn't, look at her legacy in Dr. Gaines. And it's really beautiful.
Yes, I like picturing her getting to see how he turned out and the work he does and the person he is, the father, the husband, the human, and knowing that even in those off the charts rough situations, he was very clear about her love for him. And that's protective. Yeah.
And then I also loved the story of the two teachers leaving to go and check on him. He's just such a good storyteller, because I felt like I could see the scene happening as he's describing it. And that he said, love shows up in the darkest of times, and love shows up when it's uncomfortable. Those two statements around that just jumped out at me, that's what educators show up to do when it's uncomfortable, when the times are dark. It's really, powerful.
And that little 7-year-old boy who was in an extremely vulnerable state clocked. They really care.
And even use the word love.
Right.
Love shows up. I could see that.
And then one of them becomes his sister-in-law. What?
Right. Yeah.
So great.
So great. It was interesting because you summarized all of these stories that we're sharing or resharing right now as hope and co-regulation in the face of trauma. And when you did your summary, I was seeing the hot air balloon that you described to me in a private conversation the other day, and just thinking about those teachers showing up, like they were there to cut those strings to let that hot air balloon that was Dr. Gaines just go up and up and up and up, because they were all showing up for him, cutting those ties and letting him fly.
Oh, that's
So
so
the analogy
lovely.
that popped into my head was that was last night.
But it's so lovely to think about the community and educators in particular, kind of like through that consistent love, care, presence, just snipping the baggage for young people and allowing them to become who they're meant to become. Really cool.
And that it doesn't all fall on one educator, that it's the collective doing it.
Yeah. So
What's next on your list?
well, we were joking offline that he really did take us to church, and one of the points when he did that was when he started talking about hope having an address, and that address was my school. And like that, I don't know how an educator can hear that from him and not understand at a cellular level what they're doing and how important and powerful it is. Like it just kind of cuts through all the noise to hear him say that.
Yes, and also he simultaneously said teaching shouldn't cost you your life. Burnout should not be the price of being a great educator. So even though that's true, there is also the need to protect yourself. And I liked how he said encouragement is an inside job. And it made me feel like it's also an inside job to put those protective systems in place so that you can be the shade tree.
Man, you just pulled together like the whole episode in one sentence. Well done. But what you're describing is what I think makes him so profound, is that he and I don't know if this is his entire life arc that brought him here, including his sister's untimely death after giving herself wholeheartedly to her education community. Whatever it is, his capacity to be like, you matter the most. You saved my life. You taught me how to be the person I am today. And you can do that without sacrificing yourself. Like that together and told and shared in such a grounded, authentic, embodied way, I think is what makes him reverberate for me. It's like knowledge with a capital N. It's like he's not just pontificating.
You just
He's
said
really-
knowledge with a capital N.
I mean, Kay.
I thought I'd give her the
funny. Thank you. I was picturing a capital K in my head, so it's even scarier.
I thought I should give you the opportunity to redeem yourself on that one because I know you know how to spell knowledge.
Oh my God. That is so funny.
But yes. And I was trying to decide whether his tattoo should be tend to the root or may I be a shade tree. I think may I be a shade tree.
At the end, when he talked about the shade tree and that the work is in the roots, not the fruit, and that the fruit, how did he say it? The fruit isn't striving, or the fruit doesn't strain. And that the work is in the root. It's not about forcing the fruit, it's about tending the root.
Tending the root, yeah.
I mean, that's a major, you could work on your whole life concept. Tend the root. Tend the root. Trust the fruit. That's just going to happen as it happens. Trust the shade, trust the fruit, trust all the things.
Yeah.
But none of that happens in the absence of tending the fruit, the root. Root with a capital G.
I also liked the way that you summarized it. You said, people begin to see when I love myself, when I care for myself, when I rest, I actually have more power in the lives of the people around me, not less. So, nice job there.
Oh, Ellie liked that. Ellie has a thought she wants
I was
to
moving
share.
quickly to mute.
She's part of the podcast. We need to hear her thoughts.
Okay. Before we leave that, one other comment that he said in passing, but it popped up in my life a few times this week, so I kind of wanted to highlight it. He said, anytime you love, there's always a risk attached to it. And he was speaking about that from an educator standpoint. And he even referenced suicide. And I liked that. To me, it felt like what he was saying, it sort of highlights the importance of love, but also holds the reality that you just do your part. Like, that's all you can do. And you can't, you're never guaranteed that the seed is going to grow or make it, but you just do your part. And I shared with you offline that I had spoken to a close friend in my network who's an educator, and she lost her son to suicide, or if one of them had lost a son to suicide this weekend. And I had listened to a meditation that morning and recorded the meditation for someone else. And then I found out about that. And so this meditation was just, front and center for me, and I read it to them, and I know it was passed and shared among their team, but I thought I would read it for any educators that might be facing something, or for anybody who's facing something. Life is amazing, and then it is awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between, it is ordinary, mundane, and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That's just living heartbreaking, soul-healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life, and it's breathtakingly beautiful. But I felt like that applied to the shade tree and the fruit and the seed discussion that you guys had, and it was just not lost on me that I was sharing that with other people over the last few days, so I thought I'd share it here.
Can you read it one more time? That's so lovely.
Life is amazing, and then it is awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between, it is ordinary, mundane, and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That's just living heartbreaking, soul-healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life, and it's breathtakingly beautiful.
The timing of that is powerful, in addition to those words being powerful. And what I'm picking up is that if we pay attention, the next right move of what it looks like to plant the seeds or be the shade or share the fruit, or all the things, it presents itself, and then we act on the impulse. But we can't see it, and we can't act on the impulse if we're flooded or in a survival state. But if we're in a state that's safe and connected, and we're paying attention, and we're trusting that there's more to this universe than meets the eye, things like that happen. It's good.
So should we go to prison now?
Yes.
I don't really want to go to prison, let's be clear. But that was just so powerful of his colleague or friend to say more people are in prison on the outside of prison than on the inside of prison.
I've thought about that so much since we talked to him. Yes.
I've thought about it a lot, and it brought up for me, which I think I've talked about on the podcast before, my daughter Emma, from the time she was little, would identify people who are tie-dyed and or people, and I will not say exactly what she says they wear because it's just a very conservative outfit, but just in case anyone dresses that way, I don't want to point that out. But she looks for the people, she'll say, oh, that person is tie-dyed because they live freely and they are living from a place of values. Like that's how she sees it. She sees it or talks about it. But that's what came up for me when you guys were having that discussion around putting yourself in a prison of your own mind. Does that make sense?
No, I don't think you've ever shared that. That's
I haven't.
so lovely. From when she was little, she would spot people and put them in those categories. That's really interesting. It doesn't surprise me at all that Emma could kind of like see through and spot freedom and spot mental prisons. Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I was just thinking about, like, connected to your question, like, if I'm a listener and I'm hearing that, and I'm like, what do I do with that? What I would wonder is to just, like, get curious about it. Like, is this thought, does this thought make me feel free, or does this thought make me feel constrained? Does this relationship make me feel more myself or less myself? You know, like just start almost like a third party observer, tracking on the different things in your life, the different people in your life, the different aspects, and whether or not they bring you closer to your truest self or keep you constrained from that. And then once you kind of start paying attention to that, then you can start going, you know, what is within my control to shift this?
That's interesting that you just said what's in my control to shift, because I'd made a note under kind of the freedom piece, which to me is the flip side of that. Dr. Gaines said, there is no greater joy than being able to show up as myself, detached from all the things that the world says you need to be a success, and be restful. And it made me think of Donna Zejean's work and encouraging us to shift our focus. He shifted his focus to rest.
Yes, he shifted his focus to rest. And I think he also shifted his focus, I can't remember his exact words, but it was something like wanting less.
Freedom is found in wanting less and needing less.
Yeah. Which is the opposite. We talk about this a lot on this podcast, but that's the opposite of the cultural messages.
Right.
Like our culture says all the others, like more, you need this, there's something broken in you that can be fixed by this eye cream, you know. That's what we're inundated with. So like John, you have to opt out, or you will be in the river, because it's not like there's a lot of ambiguity on what's driving our culture.
Okay, so that segues into a question that I had for you, because Dr. Gaines, when you listen to this, just know that you're the first person to really get Michelle to talk about her own story and stepping away. And I was very excited by that. So my question for you is, what was the first kind of prompt for you? Why did you wake up? How did you wake up?
I don't even know how to answer that. It was all very organic, but I can tell you that a huge tipping point for me was when I started protecting the way I started my day. And it started with just minutes. And it by the time I left that CEO ED executive director role, I had a 2-hour morning routine. And my life was as busy as it could be. I had as much on my plate as anyone might imagine. And I had a 2 hour morning routine that was yoga, running, reading, meditation. Like I just was so and you do not need that. That's ridiculous. I certainly don't do it present day. But even just 10 minutes, just that intentional sitting with yourself in whatever way that looks like for you, that was such a tipping point because when I did those things, I could hear my inner voice. Like I could hear inner wisdom. I could access maybe higher wisdom. And I couldn't do that when I was just, kind of going through the very, very busy motions.
Could you have turned it off and gone back to societal norm?
I don't think so. I think like once this train left the station, I was never going to go back. No. Because it represented that internal freedom we were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was me becoming more me. It was me getting to know what my life would look like if I was setting it up on my own terms instead of just, going through the motions of what other people expected. And you don't want to go back from that because it's like, no pun intended, but it's oxygen. It's oxygen to live in alignment with what your soul wants. I heard someone speak once about the things you desire, the things your soul wants and is fed by are not random. That's what's meant for you. So it's not like your soul is wanting something that's diverting you from your path. Your soul wants what is taking you to your truest path. And that's helpful to me to think of it that way.
The Pernille Rip always comes up for me when we have these conversations around the how, like what's an example of the how. And I feel like when she looked at her craft and figured out what was non-negotiable for her that she wanted to do for her students anyway, and that just became the thing that she was going to do, to me that's an example of not just in the morning or after work or in your actual craft, because educators are walking and working in purpose just by nature of the job, looking through and pulling out the pieces of the work that were the reason that you started in the first place. To me, feels like an example of what you just described at a soul level.
That's probably the most actionable thing we've talked about today, what you just said, to think about this loving of self, caring for self, moving toward alignment. Think of it not as something you shoehorn in at the beginning of the day, end of the day, on the weekend, 1 week of vacation a year, but it's how do I use that as a lens or compass for how I shape my work day in little tiny tweaks like Pernille.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder if she listens, because we do bring her up every other episode at least. She made a big impression on us.
She did. What else do you have?
Let's see. We covered that. We've covered this, but I feel like he was really good at describing how the life-changing things that happened for him in relationship with educators were not grand gestures. It was those little intuitive relational moves that taught him he mattered and he deserved a dream and he got to feel consistency and love and all the things. I think
And
that's important.
I'm so glad he dreamed so that we're all getting to experience him.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful messages. The last thing I have on my list is just as he was talking about walking with his principal friend and how that practice of walking was a non-negotiable for him to get up and walk and have his quiet time. And I thought about Dr. Summer Rose talking about walking every day, and then you with your running streak. And I remember there was a time when I thought, I mean, is everyone just independently wealthy? Like, how do you guys have this time? And at one point you told me it should just be a non-negotiable. And in my mind, I was like, what? How?
What planet does she
What
live
planet
on?
does she live on? And now I understand it's just a choice. And I feel like that was a lot of what Dr. Gaines, his message was around. We can choose that. We can choose that. It's on the table for all of us.
What was the quote from his friend that he walked with? It was like his definition of success included his own well-being, or oh my God, I
Yes.
didn't write it. Was that it?
It was it. It was it.
Here it is. I wrote it down. Yeah, what would it look like to define professional excellence in a way that explicitly includes the well-being of the person doing the work?
And to have adopted that, and then your suspensions go all the way down to 7, if that's not a case study for why to do it. And I loved that Dr. Gaines said, chase the right things and the right things will follow. And that suspension statistic is a perfect example of that. It's very powerful.
We're so lucky to get to know these folks and have like this kind of conversation with such extraordinary people.
It's life-changing. I know it's changed mine.
Yeah. My hunch is that John is just getting started, and whatever that means will happen on his terms, and it'll include lots of rest, and well-being will be at the center of it. But he reverberates. He's electric without trying to be. And I think I think he's just getting started. He's gonna be, even though he's done so much. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks again for being such a fun partner, and a huge thanks to the wonderful Dr. John Push Gaines.
Yes, and to all of the listeners who recommended we invite him on.
Yes, thank y'all so much. Keep that coming. That's really helpful to us.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Oxygen for Educators. Please like, share, and follow, and if inclined, leave us a 5-star review so that we can keep making content for you. Let us hear from you if you know someone we should interview or a topic we should cover.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to use their own judgment and seek appropriate professional support when needed. Oxygen for Educators, its host, and production partners are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast.